We are live.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone, for a new CRID Webinar Series today titled Lighting Design from Concept to Execution. We have a very interesting speaker with us today. We have Mrs. Cherine Saroufim, who holds a Master in Interior Architecture from the Lebanese Academy of Fine Art in Beirut and the Master of Arts in Lighting Design from Parsons, the New School of Design in New York. Her thesis, Mashrabiya, received the Illuminating Engineering Society of North America Thesis Prize and also presented during the Professional Lighting Design Association Conference in London in 2008. Since moving back from New York in 2007, Saroufim incubated the lighting design department within Munir Saroufim and Partners, a leading architecture house in Lebanon and Egypt. She has also been teaching lighting design in the schools of architecture, interior design, and landscape at Alba. She has also participated in a number of international conferences on themes related to lighting design field. Besides teaching, she's currently working projects in Lebanon, Egypt, and the state of Qatar. Saroufim is the Lebanese ambassador of Women in Lighting Association, with the aim to promote the women working in lighting design. I'm looking forward to a very interesting talk, and I would like to remind everyone who joined us today, if you have any questions, please just type them in the Q&A section. Otherwise, just send me a private message and I'll be directing all of these questions to the speaker by the end of this talk during the Q&A session. So Cherine, that would be all from my side now, and I'm looking forward to the talk, and the stage is yours.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for this lovely introduction. If you just can bear with me for to share my screen. Okay. So here we go. Thank you, George and Hannad, for welcoming me to this new CRID webinar session. As Hannad mentioned, I have both masters in interior architecture and lighting design. That makes the integration of lighting within the architecture much more interesting. Throughout this presentation, we will look at the different phases of a lighting design project, from conceptual till execution. When I think about light, my mind always drives me back to Monet's paintings. When Monet decided to paint his series, he was trying to capture every moment of the day with its nuances and details. He was trying to capture every ray of light in its different color temperature and its effect on the building and the scenery he was painting. Since then, it was a known fact that the course of the day, the 24 hours, had an effect on our inner clock, our circadian rhythm. Well, everything we see, most of what we do, and most of what we feel is touched by light. So why is lighting design becoming so challenging? Well, obviously, because we are the new generation, the generation of the video games, the generation of the tablets and smartphones, the generation of the virtual reality. We perceive spaces and environments differently than did the previous generations. Thus, the spaces we live in must adapt as much as possible to our new lifestyle. While going back to Mies van der Rohe's Seagram building, an iconic building in architecture, this was the first time a lighting designer was on the job. His name was Richard Kelly. He worked on both the day lighting and the integration of the artificial lighting in the interior spaces. The photo on the right-hand side is a rendering of a project done by Clemenceau Architects 15 years ago. It was their interpretation to the new Seagram building. So we've seen it change tremendously in maybe 60, 70 years. So what's the problem here? The problem is that modern technology helped the designers create render spaces and moods with a misleading lighting. If you look at the rendering on the left-hand side, it's obvious that there is no clear indication of where the light is and how it's positioned. It's just there. Who hasn't placed a lighting fixture in the middle of a 3D Max rendered and just turned it invisible? I know I have, and most of my students still do. Now, going back to the era of the pre-3D Max, when we were back at school, we had to do all those hand sketches and hand renderings. So in this sketch on the right-hand side, you can see that it renders perfectly the volumes and the shadows, which is a missing idea in the rendering on the left-hand side. So what's the challenge here? The challenge is how to create and reach a good lighting that enhances our architecture and interior spaces. When I was back at Parsons, the first sentence they told me is, good lighting doesn't just happen. It's design. There's no surprise when you design it. You just need to make sure that it's well thought of throughout the whole process of the design phase. So when you start thinking about your interior spaces or your architecture, automatically lighting is a material that you are adding to your architecture. And this is what we're going to try to see throughout this presentation. Now, going back to basics, I would consider lighting like a salad. So we're going to talk about lighting design, and I want to think about it like a salad made of different layers. When we have different ingredients in a salad, it becomes a rich salad. But the moment we put an extra ingredient that doesn't match the rest, it becomes soggy. So when lighting, it's the same thing. Our layers are general light, directional light, task light, and decorative light. And we'll talk about them briefly now. The first layer is the general light. I would say it's the first layer of each lighting scheme, pretty much like the lettuce in your salad. Its aim is to fill the space with light to ensure us to execute the basic tasks: walking, seeing, eating, moving around. So this is what we would add. We will add the general lighting. The second one is the directional light. It's a light that is added to create a contrast, thus shadows. It is here to attract your eyes and create the sensation of 3D. Something like a light on top of a mannequin just to showcase the fabric that's being used, or lighting on a sculpture that would enhance its 3D values. So this is what a directional light would look like. A third layer would be like a task light. It's a layer of light that is added to respond to a specific task. Like here, we added this lighting integrated into the furniture to light up the niche and the shelves. So those are added for specific tasks. And the last one is the one that we call a decorative light. It is here to add some glamour or to enhance an architectural element, like the backlighting behind this retail setting out. Now, if you want to go back to Richard Kelly, which is our Le Corbusier in the lighting field, his layers of light were focal glow, so we make it easier to see, ambient luminescence, make our surroundings safe and reassuring. The play of brilliance is to stimulate the spirit. So this is what we had for the basics of lighting, and we will talk about them throughout our presentation. Now, back to our project in the office. We are lucky enough to have a client that is called LAU, Lambert's American University, and we've worked with them for the last 10 years. And we've been creating spaces for them throughout those years to cater for their ongoing student body. We have developed until now 4 projects, 3 that were already executed and 1 to be executed hopefully by fall 2023. The first project we worked with was this Wadat Said Khoury building, which is known like the LRC, was completed in 2014. Then the LAU Jazairi building and Gulbenkian Theatre, both completed in the spring semester of 2022. And the Irwin Hall, including the Irwin Theatre, that works are expected to start in spring 2023. To our case study. I have chosen the Wadat Said Khoury Student Center as an example to walk you through the process from conceptual drawing to handing over the project to the client. This is the first project we've worked with LAU. It was completed in 2014, and it was our first collaboration with the university. As a general figures that are important in the equation of a successful project are the price per square meter of purchased equipment that was around $40 per square meter, and the wattage consumption that was around 11.8 watts per square meter. In 2014, this value, compared to their standard building consumption, was considered as a saving of almost half. Now, our newest project for the LAU Jazairi building, for example, we're at 5 watts per square meter because the newer technologies are here and we're developing a different scheme, but this was very new in 2014. So brands that were used have been installed are mainly Zumtobel, Osham, and Debas. You need to realize that in 2014, LEDs weren't that widespread. So we were still working with a standard technology like fluorescent and halogen lamps and very basic and minimal LED usage. Now, we were lucky enough to work on it on all aspects of it, not only the lighting design part, but also the interior design and the full renovation of the building. So a lot of architectural works got included. And that makes the process of integrating the lighting design even much more interesting and seamless within the architecture. So when we were approached by our client to renovate this building, their requirements were very clear. On the one hand, they wanted spaces where students would gather and mingle, and on the other hand, have as low as possible in 2012 an energy consumption cost as well as low maintenance cost. At IDEP Consult, we wanted to create a building that was very fluid, where students could easily orient themselves in the building and create subspaces where they could meet and mingle. We created color themes per floor and tasks, whereas the circulations were very monochromatic. We also wanted the lighting to be as fun and functional as the building was. The Wadat Said Khoury Student Center is spread on 5 floors, 2 underground and 3 above ground. And as its name describes, it is to house the students' activities and meeting spaces to enhance the campus's social life. So no classroom, no auditorium for classes. It's a space where students will go mingle, have fun. We have studios, we have meeting rooms, gymnasium, dancing classes, music classes, and it was a very fun space to design because it was a very old building and we had to completely renovate it, and we had structural issues, but we'll talk about those later. But the main concept was linearity and colors were the main ID concept that we worked with. We wanted something very fluid and very simple. We were privileged to win the Lumen Awards of Merit for this project from the IAS. One of the spaces that was on the underground and was having a lot of issues, specifically with the height of it, because it was barely 2 meters and 50, I think, 2.5 meters high. So we had issues with the lighting, we had issues with the technical aspect, and we wanted it, and it was underground, so no daylighting, and we wanted it to be very well dynamic. So when we're going to go through those slides, you will realize that we have 2 design elements. It's the silhouettes and the color ceilings, and those are recurrent in our design, and they are part of our ID image. The lighting is just being integrated to those spaces and following the look and feel that we're trying to create. So it was a design strategy to put all our colors in the ceiling and at the high wall levels, and it would be easier to maintain. 1 coat of fresh white paint on the walls, and the maintenance would be done. As of the silhouette, it's our very way of injecting life into the spaces and accompany the students in their different activities. So going back to this gym, the ceiling was very low, but we wanted to do something very dynamic and have a space that was full of energy. This is why we opted for this linearity and this view. We have exactly the same strategy for the dancing studios, and we wanted it to be very dynamic and very full of life. And on the left hand, you will see all the silhouettes also dancing along the students. On the same floor, you will see we have an auditorium and a music room. Also, we worked with linearity, but in the auditorium, we worked with small shapes like of linear fixture instead of having them very long and dynamic, just to make sure that it was a very low ceiling. This is why we have also black on the ceiling to forget about this, this low ceiling. On the top floors, we had we have offices and corridors to lead to those chapters, student chapters. So our approach to the lighting in those spaces were very minimal and straightforward. We have used lines and points to create patterns and rhythm, as shown in those pictures. And we have also used here very straightforward T8 buttons, like bare lamps and basically downlights. And that was our approach, to go very bare in our lighting strategy, not very complicated, because it was the design intent in our interior design strategy. One of the items that we had a lot of fun designing was this bricked ceiling, and I really like it because it has an extension to the room that is next to it. So if you see on the left side, it's a wooden partition that actually opens and becomes a bigger hall for a student gathering space. And what I really like about this picture is the integration of all the services of the building, the building requirements, the smoke detectors, the air condition, the lighting, the sprinklers. And we integrated them all in a custom-made acoustical baffle. Because when you have a lot of people in those spaces and you don't have a lot of, you have glass and wall, you need to make sure that the acoustic part of the project is very well studied. And a perfect integration is when you integrate all the different elements within this item, so we don't feel that it is added. We feel as if it's part of the design and everything is working together. Now, going deeper into the project, we are going to talk about 3 different spaces where we have integrated our lighting design scheme within our interior design scheme in a very, I would say, witty way or intelligent way, just to feel as if the integration is complete and answering all the different needs of the spaces. So we'll be talking about the level 1 student lounge, the cyber cafe, and the main cafeteria. And those are the spaces where the students would be present mostly in this building. So the first space we will be discussing is the student lounge. Sorry. The student lounge is on the first floor. The color scheme of this area is in the greenish colors, and the colors that you would see in this area and this area's picture is actually the corridor that is leading from the elevators to the student lounge. On the left hand, behind the wooden partitions, you will find actually a play area. So level 1 and level 2, we created recreational spaces and study zones for the students to interact. Each floor has different color schemes, as we mentioned before, for the different departments and function. And this is the game room where students had a lot of fun. It was one of the prerequisites of the student chapters. So we wanted to have also, again, lines in the ceiling using standard fixtures, T8 lamps. But what I like the most about this picture is actually the reflection of our fixtures in the ceiling that we've created and in the glass. So it really comes back and it gives a fun area to be in. But the most used space on this floor is this lounge. So we have on other floors study rooms and lounges, study areas, but this is mainly the lounge area where students would want to go and mingle. So we wanted to have this space that feels more static than the adjacent spaces that are next to it. This is why we have opted for a composition with circular fixtures. Instead of the other spaces where we had a lot of linearity, here we opted for a circular composition. Most of the fixtures installed in the ceiling are of off-the-shelf zoomed fixtures, so all the circles, but unfortunately they didn't have those huge fixtures that would complete our composition and give the final look and feel of our interior spaces, which are those big ones. So we had to custom make them. And the process was fairly easy on this one, bearing in mind that it is actually 2 meters wide. So the diameter of it is 2 meters. So it's it was originally, and it was executed in it's wood, so wood painted white with standard T5 fixtures inside, and diffused material is a stretch ceiling backlit. And we ended up by having a very homogeneous ceiling with the ID, and the materials didn't change much because of the type of paint we used and the dimensions and the detailing of the installation. What I wanted to show you is pictures during the installation, which I think is a lot of designers talk about their projects, and they talk about the conceptual part, and then they show us finished projects, but we never see the in-between, like the gritty, dirty aspect of the installation. So the picture here is one close-up of the structure before adding the lighting fixtures and installing them on the ceiling and having our joints reworked, because obviously it's not a standard ceiling. It has acoustical properties, and it has a pattern on it. So the integration of something very smooth and very silk with a patterned ceiling was part of our design intent. During the final painting timing, when we installed the rest of the fixture before installing our stretch ceiling, and obviously at the end the result of the project. And I have to tell you, this is one of the most used space for the students, and the furniture is designed in a way where you can relocate it, rearrange it, reassemble it. It's very modular, just to create subgroups. So this was for our first space, which is the smallest that we have worked on custom designs. The second space that is as interesting and as lively as the student lounge was the cyber cafe. So the client, when they started working with us on the project, they told us, we want a cyber cafe. So 2014, internet started getting fast in Lebanon. Before that, it was kind of lame, and they wanted students to stay on campus as much as possible. So they created this cyber cafe area that is adjacent to the main cafeteria, and they wanted to have a look and feel that it wasn't very much like a Starbucks cafe, but where students will come and have their coffee, work on their laptops, mingle a while, stay for like half an hour to an hour when they have time in between classes. So that was the space we created. The attached sketches are from our original conceptual presentation, so back in 2012. And as we have a lot of students going in, our circulation was the main obstacle, or our main concern. So at the back, you have a small counter for the coffee, and the rest are seating areas. And the other main problem that we had was also acoustics, because we would have a lot of students and the ceilings were of an average height, but we wanted to have a lot of exposed equipment. So we created those type of eggs, the oval-shaped elements that you see in the reflected ceiling sketches here. And we integrated the lighting. Those are in direct coordination with the high tables that were installed underneath it. And those also work mainly as acoustical absorbent devices. So we integrated the lighting in those items, and we made it feel as part of the interior design intent. As we go through our original sketches, we have different layers of lighting over here, mostly general lighting, but installed in different areas and in a very fun way. So we have linear fixtures on the wall to give a direction to the entrance, and we have those downlights that are installed in our egg-shaped acoustical items, and they are on top of each high table. This view is actually the view from the cafeteria looking into the cyber cafe. The second view we have here is a global view of the cyber cafe. We also have all the same layers, so the linear fixtures on the wall that are giving a lighting glow, and the downlights installed in our acoustical elements. And the last view of our original sketch is a view of the entrance with the linear fixtures and our downlights. Now, obviously, you know that all projects don't end up on schematic number one, on conceptual number one. We always have a schematic phase where this project is pushed from a very basic conceptual approach with hand sketches or inspiration images to a project that is a bit more rendered. So those are our renderings from back then. We can see that the idea is almost there. The lighting is more or less what we wanted to look like. The finishes, the look and feel, specifically the finishes on the floor. And actually this picture is one of the most proud of, is how we managed to take our idea from concept part to execution part and have it really, the image that we sold to our client is the image that is being executed at the end, and our students will be in those spaces. Now, obviously, we'll be discussing those items, this egg-shaped item, one of many, so they all start by looking the same. They are oval shaped, but the position of the lighting within those items is different because it follows the layout of the furniture underneath it. It's built with the solid wood frame with MDF water resistant on the bottom part, and a lot of putty was installed on those items. Just to have them the smooth and silky feeling of the project. So those are some of the oval-shaped eggs that we have created during installation. So we have the full ceiling, how they are well installed in the ceiling with the rods, the solid wood base with the position of the lighting fixtures. Then here we have the guys working on the putty and installing them in a way and applying it in a way that it will be smooth and without disturbing the small joint that we wanted. So we wanted the sides are a bit tilted. They are tempered. So we wanted the side to be tempered and continue on feeling a small thickness in it. So we created a small joint that would give this depth. And the integration of those fixtures. So this is a close-up on the fixtures that we have used. Those are standard fixtures that you can find at a brand called Trilux that are very fun, actually. And their integration within our architectural element made them even more appealing. Now, if you want to talk a bit more about the selling strategy within the lighting, because obviously lighting is here also to enhance the spaces, but also to boost sales. So when, if we look at this picture, so this is our main selling point, which is like a counter. So you will find the general light, which is a linear fixture on the wall. You have also the suspensions that both work as task light and directional light and general light, because you have the uplight that is the general light, the task light, which are the lighting that's going downwards on the counters. But because they are made of MR16, which is a directional source, it's giving a 3D image. We also have a task light that you will find under the counter in the back area, and a lighting that is also lighting a linear strip that's lighting the blackboard in the back. Now in this picture, they just put posters on, but the back is actually a chalkboard material where they can draw on it. And the last one is the decorative one, is the layer that is under the counter, which is just giving a feeling of a floating counter. In this picture, well, I know it's almost lunchtime. I just want to grab one of those cookies or those chocolates because their 3D rendering of it due to the directional light makes it so appealing. And Caribou ended up by serving us nice coffee over there. So the third place that we've worked on, and this is the one that was the most challenging part. Architecturally, lighting-wise, interior design-wise, and obviously technically, electromechanical, all this integration to make it feel seamless was very interesting to work with, and it was the key aspect of the whole project. And it's the main cafeteria. I will push this presentation even further, so I will show you from our first visit to the execution of the project, all the different phases. When we went to see the project on the first time, we were very shocked by the existing premises, and I'll show you a picture of it. But the interior design of the space was crucial. The area occupied by the cafeteria is the residue space between two different buildings, the Nickel Hall and the previously RRC building, now our student center. It was a central courtyard, actually, that was completely covered, so with no daylight whatsoever entering the spaces. And those are the pictures of our first visit to the space. And I still remember it when back then it was very gloomy, it was very yellowish, and it was very incandescent because those fixtures are 30 years old. Some other pictures of the spaces themselves, look at the floor, look at the height, look at the finishes, the gloominess. Students were sitting there but not very encouraged. They didn't look very happy about it. The counter, let's talk about that counter because nothing was appealing. I didn't want to even go and buy whatever they had because the lighting was very homogeneous. The level of lighting were low. There wasn't enough contrast between the different spaces. And we really knew that we needed to make a big change in this area. And the space that would have the most impact was this space. Just a close-up on the original fixtures. Those are modular, brand code modular fixtures, and they were installed easily in the 60s, back in the 60s. It was a design piece back then. Again, going back to our original conceptual drawings. So interior design speaking, the first thing we did was make sure that the circulation was smooth and quick. We also wanted to lose the shoebox effect that pushed us to create a tilting in our volume. So we pushed it diagonally. And we created some architectural elements in the ceiling and on the wall to have a very animated space. The renovated cafeteria has a total capacity of around 150 seated places, and it serves around 1,000 meals a day. On the ceiling, this is what we created, and I'll be talking about them in depth. So when we started thinking about this project and we started doing the analysis, we looked into the average time spent of the student in the old cafeteria and the money per hour generated. And what we found out that our main problem was that the students either did not want to enter the space at all, or would go off campus for a quick coffee or a snack, or actually on the opposite side, they would spend too much time lounging on the chairs without any consumption, so without buying or continue their consumption. So students were disoriented by the lighting, if I may say, of the lack of daylight, and this had a negative impact on the cafeteria profitability in both financial and utilized space. So that was our major concern, how to get students to stay into their space and to utilize their cafeteria and to mingle as much as they can, but also not to miss class and realize how much time they spent in this area and leave. Going back to our original sketches, so this is our entrance to the cafeteria. We can see from our entrance the counter that is on the right-hand side in the back, and we have created those three elements, which are the basic of our design. So our solution was to create those three artificial skylights that would mimic the daylight and sync with the students' circadian rhythm. They would instinctively know how much time they have spent in the space and not be completely disconnected from the outside world. So we know that the space was completely shut, there was no daylighting. So our solution was to create those three artificial skylights. So we have, going back to our linearity in our concept, so linear fixtures on the wall, some fixtures behind the wooden louvers, but also some directional fixtures on top of our counter, just to enhance it. So when I come in, I start seeing my cafeteria counter, the lighting that is integrated in my skylights, so those artificial sky lighting, and I have a linear that is at the entrance that is guiding me to go into the cafeteria. It's all part of the strategy of having a smooth and quick circulation within our spaces, knowing that on peak hours we have easily 150 to 170 students that want to eat in maybe in an hour gap. The second sketch that was presented was this one, with the same different layers of light that we're having, the linear fixtures in the back, the skylights, and the directional light also that is leading us to our counter on the right. And all of this was to enhance the visual aspect. So we have contrast spaces. We have spaces that were lit in higher levels than other ones, just to attract the eye. And this is why we have directional fixtures over there, directional light. And the last view is a higher view from of the image we were creating. So we still have the same thing, the linear behind the wooden louvers. We have the artificial skylights, and it's all part of our interior image, very monochromatic with one color and gray. Now, until now, I've shown you the conceptual drawings, and those are the technical drawings that were issued for tender. So those were the drawings that were issued for the execution period. I want to show you the false ceiling levels that show the false ceiling drawings that show all the integration of all the different aspects of the project: mechanical, electrical, false ceiling, access panels, lighting. Really a project that was worked thoroughly and thoroughly. Along with those, we presented those conceptual also renderings that showed correctly the look and feel of the project and what was the design intent we were trying to achieve. This is the final rendering that we presented to the client. And this one is the executed project. So a very big consistency between the image we originally sold to the client and the project we delivered at the end. This project had a lot of challenges, both structurally, budget-wise, and physically. But at the end, we had a lot of fun executing it and working on it and designing it. One of the aspects that we didn't see, again, is the silhouette. So those silhouettes are at the entrance of the cafeteria with the linear fixture next to them that are going with the direction of the students going in and out from the cafeteria. Again, with this idea of having a lot of people in the space and enhancing this crowded areas type of concept. One of the other design elements that we integrated in our ID was those wooden louvers. So those wooden louvers are here for acoustical reasons, because they would break the sound, as much as our artificial skylights were here to also absorb all this sound in this huge space. Imagine 150 students talking in this very high ceiling, and mostly bare walls. So those two items, other than having an ID image, were acoustically very important for us. And what I like about those is the small, behind my wooden louvers, is the small bare T5 lamps, T8 lamps again, just to give it a more industrial look and feel to the space, and fun area. So this is another view of the wooden louvers, and we will be discussing those. This skylight, actually, this artificial skylight. We have created 3 different artificial skylight. They are made out of a metal structure and covered with gypsum board and different T5s of different temperature, just to have, and we'll discuss what they do afterwards. And they had a control system by Zoom toggle. During the construction, we needed to make sure that the structure was very well fixed to the ceiling, bearing in mind that this ceiling was a bare structural ceiling because nothing was on top of it. We needed to make sure that it had the majestic shape that we created. It is a very present and omnipresent element in our interior design. So it was covered with gypsum boards and then puttied and painted. Once it was all completed, we integrated the T5 buttons with the control system, and the diffused part of the fixture was a backlit stretch ceiling fabric. And the result is this. This is what we ended up by having. This is where the design becomes more interesting. So we talked about having those artificial skylight, but until now you've seen the skylight under one temperature. But what we have created is those skylights that change temperature and intensity. So we had a control system that actually mimic daylight and change smoothly from 1 hour to another, changing from warm white light around 2700 K in the morning, that looks like a sunrise in the morning, and with low light levels. Then around noon, when everybody's having lunch and we want to boost energy, and we want students to be very energized, we change the temperature to very cool temperature, so 5,600 K. It looks like a lot of daylight at noon, very bluish light, and then tone it down to the lighting of the afternoon and lower the light levels again to a warmer temperature, very much like a sunset. So when they are leaving the cafeteria at night and going back at home or staying there for some time, their stress levels are lowering, and they can easily go calmer to the house or to their night classes. So all those installation was done was fluorescent lamps and a very intelligent control system, daily dimmable ballast, and they were installed behind those translucent stretch ceiling. So the first picture we have here is a very cool daylight fixture. So it's more a lighting around noon to 2 o'clock. In the middle, this is what we call a neutral white light. It's around 4,000 K. So this is the optimal lighting to have in classrooms or malls. It has no impact on the color scheme. And this is what we had more or less 70% of the time in our cafeteria. And the right picture shows the lighting on a very warm lighting. It's very subtle changing. You will not see it orangey like it was before, but those small changes will make a big difference on our circadian rhythm when we are sitting in those spaces. And the control changes the lighting very smoothly. You will not feel it. It's very smooth. So at the end of the presentation, I just want to tell you that one semester after the inauguration of the newly renovated Wadat Said Khoury building, the numbers made by the cafeteria were multiplied by 7, and till this date, the cafeteria is always crowded and is considered as a gathering space where students and faculty mingle. It's one of their core spaces in LAU Beirut campus. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you so much, Cherine. I think we did enjoy it. Personally, I have, I mean, you have got all of my attention, and I have, I mean, with me a few questions to ask, and it's very, very informative, and it actually reflects a very rich practical experience in the field of interior design. So I think we can get directly into the questions. Again, coming back from maybe asking a question from a perspective of student. So when you get into the lighting design of a space, what are the main factors that you put into consideration before designing the light of any space? Of course, one of them could be the function. What are there any other factors that you put into consideration when you do the lighting design?
Yes, of course. Actually, the first aspect we looked into it is the people that will be living in it. And our approach is very human-centric. It's not design-centric. It's not for the, yes, obviously, if you manage to have a space that design-wise, it looks very nice, but if we can't answer the needs of the people that will be living in those spaces, specifically in lighting, because there are some tasks that need to be undertaken in those spaces, and we have different people groups that will react to lighting differently, and mentality-wise also it will react. So if you're designing for young people, if you're designing for older people, for senior people, if you're designing for people in Lebanon or in the Middle East, if you're designing for people in Norway, the attitude and their approach to lighting and their relationship to lighting is very different from their background, where they live, and their needs. So we start thinking about light with who is going to use the space, and then we start talking about tasks, functions, and the integration into architecture or interior design.
So and taking it from here, once the decision is made and you have put on a proposal for the lighting, how do you usually test the lighting values to make sure that you're actually satisfying, or you're actually how do you test? Is there any software to test so the students maybe they can use it and look into it?
So we at the design stage, we have softwares like it's called we have a software called Dialogs or AGI 32. So those are software that are that give you quantity and quality, but they don't give you the human experience. On big projects, like we designed all the lighting schemes for all the ABC stores in Lebanon. So we had study cases, actually. We had parts of the stores that we were implementing as pre-design. In ABC Ashafia, we did it on the 3rd floor. So we renovated the whole 3rd floor, and we had study groups check how it was going along with our clients. So we had the numbers, we had the reaction of the people our team went several times after that the project was executed, and we saw the reaction of the people, how we did, and we did it on the other 3 floors as ABC Ashafia was our main store, and then we implemented whatever we learned and whatever we didn't want to do in the other stores. This is one of the examples that we can do specifically on big projects where there's a lot of impact and budgetary impact as well, because the client is always reticent into putting money into lighting because it's usually forgotten.
Yeah, and also once you test what you designed, do you keep in mind, you know, with all of the sustainability talk going on so far, we're trying to minimize the energy consumption, and so far we have been discussing in this lecture the artificial lighting. So to which extent do you are you trying to keep it to the minimum use of energy use, especially when you talked about the interesting concept of artificial skylight? And I thought why do we need artificial skylight, and also functionality wise, if we're using an artificial skylight, we are concentrating the light in a certain space, in a certain location, position within the space. So maybe this question is divided into 2. First, how do we keep in mind minimizing the energy consumption, and why do we need an artificial skylight?
we are very sustainable in our approach to lighting. So even in 2014, when we did the lighting design scheme for LAU, Wadat Said Khouri, our energy consumption was divided by 2. And the new project that we just finished for LAU, which is School of Architecture, Interior Design, Fashion, and so on and so forth, our wattage consumption was as low as 4 watts per square meter, which is very low. And this is part of our strategy. And we do this on all our projects. We are and when I teach also my students, I always tell them, if you think that you can replace this fixture or this lighting or this indirect lighting with a color, that means that the lighting you are adding here is for no use. So just remove it. This is why we talk about general light, task light, directional light. So we know exactly where we are adding the lighting for the functions that we are trying to do. So this is on the sustainability part. So for the artificial skylight, unfortunately for this, we do a lot of daylighting studies in our projects because we are also an architectural firm. So when we start building our projects, we do the daylighting study. Unfortunately for this project specifically, it was a central courtyard that was completely closed and we could not open it up to create skylights. At the beginning, this was our original intent because obviously there's no competition to daylight. Daylight is a moving source in the sky, it changes intensity. In 5 minutes, you can have a completely different look and feel because of the lighting. So we cannot compete with it. But what we can do is try to tune. Our aim in this project is to try to tune the students' circadian rhythm to a certain rhythm so that from once they don't stay all day long there, and from two to boost actually, yes, to boost sales, because we wanted the space to be as functional for the university than for the students, and it's part of it. So this is the approach to it.
That's very interesting, and thank you for all of the answers. The last one I would go for is any takeaway, any advice for the audience, especially the students attending this talk today?
Always question whatever you're doing in lighting, because light is not a material you can touch. Light is not like a fabric you can go and feel it. It's not it. There's only, if one parameter changes, like let's say from a black room to a white room, whatever design scheme you've created is completely changing. Daylighting is the main lighting power in the world, and understand that you live under the same sky and the same sun, but you don't understand the same sun and the same sky as people that live on the other side of the world, because lighting is very psychological and it's very, how can I say, cultural oriented. There is no good right lighting. There is a good lighting for a specific group and a specific installation. And just have fun with it, because it's really one of the nicest things that we can work with. It changes the whole mood, and it can make you feel at ease, or on the other side, it can make you want to go out in 2 minutes.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's very tricky because you can't really, you will never be certain of how people will experience the light you design. So I think that's the tricky part. George, do you have anything to add before we close this session?
Yes, of course. First, thank you so much, Cherine, for this insightful and inspirational presentation. Really very interesting. And if I may, Cherine, I would like just to say that, you know, Cherine and her brother Shadi, we both graduated from the same university, and we were all taught by her father, Munir Saroufim, who is, you know, who was an amazing professor, and I think he's still an amazing professor. And he actually, you know, we learned a lot from his extensive experience. You know, one of the giants of his firm is one of the giants in Lebanon. So that was really very privileged to have, you know, have him taught all of us. Cherine, I have just a question. I noticed, like I saw, you know, the before and the after, especially the last space you showed, which was fantastic. I mean, you see it how it was before and how it became later. It's just a wow effect. I noticed something in the design you showed, that many of the ceiling that you did had actually colors in it. So is there a strategy or a philosophy behind adding color? Like we could see the space, the architectural space below, like more monochrome, but we could see a highlight on the ceiling. So is there any philosophy behind that that you think or you do there for a reason or so?
We wanted to add colors in the building because it's a student center, so it needs to be fun. I cannot just go back in a grayscale area, but our main concern was maintenance, because if I have colors on the walls and students will come and put their feet on the wall or take a Sharpie and write on it, maintenance would be very difficult. They will not catch the same green or the same yellow or the same colors that we have. And maintenance cost as well, like you would have to have in stock all those colors. So this is why we opted actually to have them on the ceiling. And we wanted them to go back down to a certain level. On all the floors, it's the same level because we had different ceiling levels. And this is to give a human factor. So it goes back down and it stops, I guess it was at 2.4 meters. And so this gave us a human scale. And whenever you were going up and changing levels, the human scale stayed and the ceiling started to have fun. And this is the joke was, you know, in Lebanon we have a lot of political parties, and it's a lot of colored political parties. And so everybody was telling me, what are you designing projects for this party or this? It's like, no, I'm designing for United Colors of Benetton. Everybody's involved. Everybody has a place there.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's it from my side. Thank you, Cherine.
Thank you,
for
Cherine.
having me.
Thank you again, Cherine. That was very informative, and thanks for everyone who attended today, and thanks, George. I think we'll see them, George, in next fall now. That would be the last CRID webinar for this year. So thank you all, and see you, and have a good day. See you next session.